Welcome to the Preschool Transitional Kindergarten Learning Foundations, or PTKLF, presentation of the History and Social Science domain. This pre-recorded presentation is part of the series of presentations developed by the California Department of Education in partnership with WestEd that follows the release of the PTKLF. And this is to provide a snapshot of each domain covered in the publication. This presentation is focused on the history and social science domain, and we are joined by one of the writers of this domain, Lynette Solis. And for an overview of the introduction of the PTKLF publication, including its structure, organization, and major revisions, please visit our prior pre-recorded presentation titled PTKLF Introductions. And my name is Lily Moffett, and I'm an education research and evaluation consultant in the Early Education Division at the California Department of Education. The agenda for today is to provide acknowledgements for the contributions of this specific domain, provide an overview of the organization of this domain, provide examples of foundations in each strand, and there's one for social inquiry skills, self and social systems, skills for democracy and being a community member, time, continuity, and change, sense of place and environment, and lastly, economic systems. We will then discuss the diversity of children's developing knowledge in the history social science domain, and then how educators can foster this knowledge. We'll end with the closing and access to the full published domain. We also wanted to take a moment to list some acknowledgements for individuals who contributed significant time to the development of this domain. In addition to the California Department of Education and WestEd team, we had our lead writers, Katie Payne from University of Texas, Austin, and Lynette Solis from WestEd. We also consulted with subject matter experts Anna Faulkner at the University of Memphis. And we had specific reviewers who brought the lens of inclusion, cultural diversity, or multilingual learners. So we had Ioma Iruka from University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, Mary McLean from the University of Florida, Marlene Zepeda from California State University, Los Angeles, and Frida Bennett from the Quartz Valley Indian Reservation. We would also like to thank our many educators and interest holders who participated in focus groups and provided feedback. I'll now pass it on to the WestEd lead writer to talk through the details of this domain.
Thank you. I will first start with the overall definition, structure, and organization of this domain. The PTKLF in the domain of history social science addresses how 3 to 5.5-year-olds learn about and make sense of the social world, including their families, schools, communities, and the institutions and places they encounter in their daily lives. The domain of history social science supports young children's developing understanding of their social world. It considers how children grapple with questions of who they are in the world and how they relate to other people in space and across time. The organization of the history social science domain includes 6 strands, which I'll present on 2 separate slides. The first strand is social inquiry skills, which includes asking questions and using evidence and communicating ideas about the social world. The second strand is self and social systems, which includes self-identity and society and culture, difference, and diversity. The third strand is skills for democracy and being a community member, which aligns with civics. This includes fairness and respect for other people, community norms, and practices in collaborative problem solving. The fourth strand is time, continuity, and change, which includes understanding time, personal history, and historical changes in people and the world. The fifth strand is sense of place and environment, which includes navigating familiar locations, representations of physical space, and caring for the natural and built world. The last strand is economic systems, which includes community needs and exchange. This is a sample of how the foundations are structured with the foundation numbered. In this case, it is 2.1 on self-identity, which indicates it is within the second strand of self and social systems and the first foundation within this strand. The foundation statements are then underneath this label, which describe the skills children can demonstrate in the early foundation, the column on the left, and the later foundation, the column on the right. Below these foundation statements are a series of examples, only one of which is listed here to demonstrate. The first examples for each foundation are aligned to demonstrate the developmental progression more clearly. Some major changes in the domain of history social science from the 2012 Preschool Learning Foundations include the addition of a strand on social inquiry skills, a focus on children's role as members of the communities they belong to, including their early learning settings, and highlighting the diversity of children's social world and lived experiences in the foundations and examples. Now I will present some examples within each strand. The first strand is social inquiry skills. This strand focuses on children's questions about their social world, including individuals, groups, and institutions that make up society. The substrands include asking questions and using evidence in communicating ideas about the social world. This example comes from communicating ideas about the social world substrand, focused on creating representations. In the early foundation, a child creates representations, for example, drawings, three-dimensional models, embodied action, or stories to show developing understanding of the social world, such as people, places, and institutions with adult support. For example, a child may draw places they saw on a community walk. Then, in the later foundation, children create more detailed representations to deepen and share their understanding of the social world with adult support. For example, a child working alongside other children uses cereal boxes to create a model of a street they saw on a community walk. The children then show and describe their models to their families at a class celebration. So you can tell that the progression goes from creating more simple representations of the social world, like a drawing, to creating more detailed representations, like a 3D construction, and then sharing about their understanding of that representation of their social world. The second strand is self and social systems. This strand addresses how children develop capabilities to understand who they are, their personal identity, other people's identities, and how identities shape their and other people's experiences in the world. Developing a sense of personal identity is essential to developing respect for others. The substrands include self-identity and society and culture, difference, and diversity. This example comes from the self identity and society substrand, and it's focused on awareness of social roles. In the early foundation, a child exhibits awareness of familiar everyday social roles. For example, a parent, a sibling, teachers, and doctors. For instance, a child may grab the stethoscope from the dramatic play area and announce, "I'm the doctor." Then, in the later foundation, children exhibit awareness of the broader social roles beyond the everyday social roles they typically encounter. For example, in the dramatic play area, a child may pick up a stuffed dog and a stethoscope and tell others, "We're at the vet and I'm the puppy's doctor." So you can tell the progression goes from awareness of more common social roles to an awareness of broader social roles a child may observe in the community or learn about through books and curricula. The third strand is skills for democracy and being a community member, or that aligns with civics. This strand covers how children develop and demonstrate civic skills through their interactions with and treatment of other people, their participation in group norms and practices, and their problem solving at both the interpersonal and whole group levels. For young children, an early education program is often their first public civic space outside the sphere of the home and family, and it gives children many opportunities to learn and demonstrate their skills in being community members. The substrands include fairness and respect for other people, community norms and practices, and collaborative problem solving. This example comes from the fairness and respect for other people substrand, focused on identifying and including members of peer groups. In the early foundation, a child recognizes members of their peer group, for example, members of their classroom, team, or activity group, and include them in play and learning activities. For instance, children line up to go inside when the teacher calls, "Rainbow class, let's go," and a child may call to a peer, "Come on, it's us, Rainbow class." Then in the later foundation, children identify members of their peer groups and include them in more collaborative play and learning activities. For example, during outdoor play, a child may communicate to their cousin in another class, "That's Maya and Nasir, they're in my class." So you can see the progression goes from more basic awareness and recognition of members of their group to then being able to more concretely identify members within their group and collaborate with them in play and learning activities. The fourth strand is time, continuity, and change. This strand addresses how children develop a sense of time and their place within the stories of their families and larger communities, both near and far. Developing a sense of time is a foundation for learning about historical events in elementary years. The substrands include understanding of time, personal history, and historical changes in people and the world. This example comes from understanding of time substrand focused on using time order words. In the early foundation, children use sequential words or phrases such as before and after to describe the time order of everyday personal events. For example, during the morning meeting, when a teacher goes over the schedule, a child calls out, "We're doing art before lunch today." And in the later foundation, children begin to indicate order with increasing accuracy and sophistication using words like before, after, then, next, yesterday, and tomorrow. For example, a child looks at the class schedule picture cards on the wall and describes, "We're going to art, then we're going to lunch, then we're going to play outside." So you can see the progression goes from describing some simple before and after sequential events to describing sequential events with more accuracy and sophistication. The fifth strand is sense of place and environment. This strand focuses on how children develop skills related to understanding location and place, as well as how to communicate this understanding of physical space through drawings and three-dimensional visualizations. This strand also focuses on how people interact with, impact, and care for their environment. The substrands include navigating familiar locations, understanding physical space through drawings, building materials and maps, and caring for the natural and built world. This is an example from the representations of physical space substrand, focused on understanding physical space through drawings, building materials, and maps. In the early foundation, children demonstrate an emerging understanding that drawings, globes, building materials, and maps can represent the physical world, but often interpret map symbols imprecisely. For example, looking at a simple map, a child identifies water and land, but cannot interpret other symbols. Then, in the later foundation, children create their own drawings, maps, and models, use globes, maps, and map symbols, and use maps for basic problem solving. For example, the location of objects. And they do this more skillfully and with adult support. For example, a child draws a map of their classroom and points out, "See, there's the rug and the tables and the blocks. Then there's me and my friends and my teacher." So you can see the progression goes from a basic understanding of how drawings and maps can represent the physical world to being able to create their own representations and to use them to solve problems. The sixth strand is economic systems. This strand covers how children consider the ways people shape and participate in economic systems and how people meet their needs as part of the economic decision-making process. Children also consider everyday economic concepts they experience, including exchange, opportunity cost, and supply and demand. The substrands include community needs and exchange. This example comes from the exchange substrand focused on understanding exchange. In the early foundation, children recognize and use different forms of exchange, including trading and the use of money to buy and sell. For example, when playing market in the dramatic play area, a child with autism points to a communication board indicating that their peer should pay $5 for the toy train. Then, in the later foundation, children understand more complex exchange concepts like choosing one item over another, that is opportunity cost, limited access to or limited amounts of a resource, that is supply and demand, and the exchange of money to buy and sell goods and services. For example, a child shares that they got to choose what to buy at the flea market. The child remarks, "I used my money to buy a little tiger." So you can see that the progression goes from recognizing of some forms of exchange, like using money, to understanding more complex exchange concepts, like having a limited amount of money, so you have to choose which item to get. I also want to highlight some examples of teaching strategies to support children's history, social science knowledge, including a consideration for the diversity of children in developing this knowledge. The foundations in history, social science draw on the diverse experiences of children with varied cultural, racial, ethnic, ability, and linguistic backgrounds. Children's engagement with history, social science should be informed by their life experiences, drawing on their home and community knowledge. While there is a focus on children's lived experiences in their immediate social worlds, this domain also expands their access to perspectives and experiences of people and places beyond those experiences. Throughout the domain, examples highlight children coming from various geographical communities, urban, suburban, rural, as well as from various racial and ethnic backgrounds. The domain recognizes the social communities with which children identify, including religion, culture, language, race, ethnicity, and ability, and highlights a variety of family relationships and structures, including the role of elders within the educational experiences of young children. Examples within the domain also reference different cultural traditions and social roles and include ways that families and communities engage with young children in their learning environments. The history social science domain places a strong emphasis on civics and being a good community member. To help children with this, it is important to create a positive classroom culture where you model how to contribute to the classroom community and create a culture of helping peers. This can be achieved by establishing clear routines, rules, and helping roles, as well as sparking discussions on how to be a good community member, asking children to contribute examples of this and how they feel when contributing to their classroom community and helping their peers. History social science is also a great content area to create or embed within curriculum themes. For example, if your curriculum theme is on buildings, make connections with buildings children see in their communities, or if the theme is on the environment or wildlife, have children make connections with how to keep their own communities clean and provide examples of wildlife children see depending on the geography of your program. The Dramatic Play Center is one way to expose children to different social roles, like pretending to be a firefighter, family member roles, post office worker, doctor, and other roles children see in their home and community. Consider themes or scenarios in your program's local community, like local farmers market, garden center, thrift shop, and other places children visit. It is also helpful to include materials that reflect children's identities and communities, as well as diverse identities that are not in your program. For example, cookware that children may find in their home, like a tortilla warmer, a mini wok pan, or a rice cooker, as well as dolls of different races and ethnicities and accessories like a sleeping scarf or bonnet, a wheelchair, or a doll communication device. You can partner with families to learn more about the materials and spaces children are familiar with. History social science themes can also be integrated during Read Aloud books. When choosing books, think of providing children with windows and mirrors, which is a teaching practice that provides children with opportunities to see their own identities reflected in a book, a mirror, or as well as opportunities to observe identities and contexts in the world that are different from their own, or a window. When considering this, you can think of books that reflect the geography of your community. For instance, if you live in a city, choosing some books that children can relate to depicting city life. Books related to history, social science strands of self-identity and society can also spark discussions about race, ethnicity, abilities, and other identities. These can be good opportunities to address topics of bias and racism, and for children to ask questions about people and communities who are different from them. Storytelling is also another good modality to experience and learn about history, social science topics. Storytelling is common in various cultures and can be a form of sharing traditions and history from one's community and culture. Preschoolers are able to create and retell stories from their own life and imagination that reflects their lived experiences. It's important to note that books are not the only text that history, social science topics can be experienced through. Maps and photographs are also powerful tools that can relay information on key history, social science topics and learning about a community and really bring elements of the physical and social world to life. And a theme that I've touched on throughout is the importance of families and making connections to home and community. Activities like community walks and interviewing local community members provide children with access to the broader community. Teachers can engage families and learn about home practices and stories, including traditions, family characteristics, and everyday ways of living and communicating. In developing activities that build connections to children's home and community, teachers should not assume any particular family structure and should ask questions in a way that includes children from diverse family backgrounds. Furthermore, teachers should be sensitive to family privacy and respect the wishes of children and families who may prefer not to participate. Children's development and learning is impacted by their family and community experiences, identities, and histories, including the effects of historical trauma, systemic oppression, and other forms of adversity. Teachers can work with families and communities to build supportive learning spaces for children. Engaging families in these ways is crucial to children's learning about the self and others within our diverse society.
In closing, for a more detailed view of the history social science domain, you can read the full document, which is published on CDE's website. And future pre-recorded presentations will also be published on the CDE website as they are released. And to visit the website, you can visit https://www.cde.ca.gov/SP/CS foundations.asp. Thank you for listening to today's pre-recorded presentation.